Welcome to the Sci-Fi Evolution channel. The camera operators move through the dense undergrowth, feeling an extraordinary surge of vitality. Xenon was unlike any place they had ever encountered. The atmosphere was filled with a faint electric charge, and the bioluminescent flora illuminated the jungle floor with an eerie, unearthly glow. It was a place untouched by time, a living museum of prehistoric life awaiting its opening. They caught up with their leader, Vulcan Koval, a man whose ambitions were visible in every wrinkle of his weathered face. He is a self-proclaimed media visionary who organized this expedition to capture the legendary creature that was rumored to inhabit the island. He saw it as a chance to break records, but he had a different goal in mind. Dr. Wilhelm, Koval's assistant, raised his voice above the noise of the jungle, but it was barely audible. "Have you seen any signs of this huge primate yet?" he asked. Annie sighed to herself. "We have not yet found convincing evidence of the existence of a giant primate, Mr. Wilhelm. However, the abundance of vegetation suggests the presence of large herbivores." Koval chuckles at the thought of giant herbivores. "Who's going to pay to watch giant salad eaters?" he says. "People crave excitement and drama, colossal animal fights that sell tickets and make them roll their eyes," says Wilhelm, but they remain silent. Koval's quest for ratings often clouds his judgment, but he's here for science, not sensationalism. Suddenly, their guide, a thin man named Orion, who claimed to be a native of a neighboring island, stopped abruptly. He pointed to a cluster of ancient trees that towered over them like mighty giants. "The heart of Xenon," he whispered in a reverent tone and followed his gaze. The trees were huge, their roots like gnarled snakes, screwed into the ground. A faint hum vibrated between their trunks, which increased as they approached. There was a palpable energy in the air, a sense of anticipation that sent shivers down her spine. The team stood in awe. Even Koval was fascinated by the sheer size and unearthly nature of the object. Her scientific curiosity was aroused, and she rushed to him, her knees sinking into the damp earth. It was amazing! She took a deep breath, running her hand over the smooth metal surface. It was unlike anything she had ever seen. The object was cold, but it was buzzing with energy. Koval joined her, carefully walking around the object. That was what they came for. Wilhelm said it was a giant metal egg. "What should they do with it?" "This is not an ordinary egg, Mr. Wilhelm," Koval explained. His voice was full of excitement. "It could be an artifact, a relic of a long-lost civilization, or perhaps even an alien origin." Koval laughed at the thought of aliens. "Wilhelm, you've read too many science fiction books," he said. "We came here for fun, remember?" He added, "Something that people will like." Ignoring him, Croucher examined the object more closely again. He noticed faint grooves on its surface, almost like a primitive lock. His mind raced with possibilities. Could it have been revealed? What secrets are hidden inside? Suddenly, the ground shook under their feet. A low rumble filled the air. The metal object began to emit a steady hum that grew louder and louder. The surface of the object cracked with energy, and the groove shone ominously with blue light. Panic appeared on Koval's face. "What's happening?" The anomaly was awakening, and the tremors intensified to strong earthquakes, throwing the expedition team to the ground. The clearing shook, and the ancient trees groaned and swayed, trying to find stability. Fear replaced surprise on their faces as the massive tree split open, showering them with leaves and debris. Amidst the chaos, the metal object pulsed with ever-increasing light, its surface cracking further, revealing a glimmer of darkness inside. While a primal roar echoed through the clearing, a sound unlike anything they had ever heard before. Pure power, a cry of awakening. Koval quickly regained consciousness and stood up, while the camera operators frantically adjusted their equipment to capture the scene. The man's voice was a mixture of horror and excitement as he focused on an object in the dark. The darkness seemed to expand, revealing a massive silhouette with a distinct metallic sheen. He was both scared and curious about what it could be. It wasn't a mythical giant primate, but something much more frightening. As the roar echoed through the clearing, the object split with a deafening crack, and a colossal creature appeared. His form was shrouded in fog and debris, towering over the trees. His body was a fusion of organic muscle and metal, with sharp claws protruding from his mighty arms. Bioluminescent ridges ran along his spine, and his eyes glowed with an eerie blue light. Chaos ensued when the operator, ignoring Koval's instructions, dropped his equipment and ran to a tree. Even Koval himself felt a sense of fear. His face was pale. Grandiose dreams of capturing the spectacle were replaced by the chilling reality of a being beyond imagination. The creature, disoriented and blinded by the sunlight filtering through the broken canopy, stumbled towards us. It let out another deafening roar, a sound that seemed to reverberate in our bones. At that moment, the legend of Xenon seemed less like a myth than a terrifying prophecy. Orion, our guide, surprisingly did not run away, but instead sank to the ground, raising his hands in a gesture of surrender. In a language that sounded like guttural chants, he spoke to the creature. His voice was full of fear, but there was also a hint of recognition in it. The creature turned to Orion, its blue eyes narrowed. It paused for a moment, as if analyzing Orion. Then, with a deliberate gesture, it raised its massive metal claw inches from Orion's head. After witnessing this unexpected encounter, they felt a surge of hope. Perhaps there is a possibility after all. The means of interacting with this creature may not have been inherently unfriendly, but this hope was short-lived. A sudden flash of light illuminated the clearing, followed by a deafening explosion. A military helicopter, attracted by the commotion, launched a missile attack. The creature roared in pain as the missile hit its shoulder, leaving a smoking crater on its metal hide. The attack destroyed the fragile bond between Orion and the creature. It turned its fiery gaze on the helicopter, and a primal scream burst from its throat. With unexpected agility, the creature jumped, grabbing the helicopter with one hand. The helicopter spun wildly, blades slicing through the air. The pilot panicked and struggled with the controls, but it was useless. The creature tore the helicopter in half in one brutal motion, and the debris crashed into the clearing. The crew watched in horrified silence as the wreckage of the helicopter smoldered at the bottom of the jungle. The enraged and wounded creature turned its attention to the humans. They attacked him and knew they had to act fast. It was no longer just a creature. It was a wounded and furious giant, a potential harbinger of chaos. They needed to escape and warn the world of the danger they had unleashed. But where could they go, and how could they outrun such a colossus? When the creature let out another deafening roar and charged at them, Koval stumbled and fell, but Annie grabbed his arm and lifted him up. Adrenaline surged through their veins, drowning out the chaos of the collapsing jungle as Koval ran alongside Annie with surprising agility for a man his size. His face was a mask of horror as the enraged creature, like a monstrous silhouette against the dim light filtering through the canopy, rumbled after them, its metal claws tearing through the undergrowth, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. They went out into the urban wilderness where they could find shelter. However, the Colossus was not so easily defeated. They knew that they needed to think carefully about their next move if they wanted to survive. Among the dense vegetation, a clearing with a rickety wooden bridge was the only way across the stormy river. It was a risky business, but it was their only option. "Volcano!" we shouted. Koval's eyes were wide with fear as he hesitated. The bridge looked like it could barely support a single person, let alone the raging beast behind them. There was no time to argue. I grabbed his arm and started dragging him towards the bridge. The creature let out another roar, its deep guttural sound reverberating through the clearing. It reached the edge of the clearing. Its shape seemed large and menacing. The wooden planks creaked under our combined weight. The river below was churning furiously, a seething mass of white water and jagged rocks. I pushed Koval onto the bridge and then followed him. My heart was pounding in my chest. Behind us, the creature let out a frustrated roar. It couldn't fit on the bridge, but it wouldn't give up. With a sickening sound, one of the support beams gave way, causing the bridge to tilt dangerously, knocking it off balance. He yelped, grabbing onto a loose board, dangling dangerously over the rushing river. His grip tightened on the slippery surface, fear threatening to paralyze him, but he suppressed it. He won't let himself fall. He screamed, digging his heels into the remaining boards, but the creature, sensing his vulnerable position, took advantage of the opportunity. It extended a long metal arm towards him, its razor-sharp claws glinting in the dim light. Instinctively, with a rush of adrenaline, he grabbed a branch that had fallen from the ground and sharply poked it up, poking it into the creature's outstretched claw. It roared in pain, pulling its arm back with a screech of metal. The bridge groaned again, threatening to collapse completely, fueled by a sudden surge of power. Getting to their feet, they ran and screamed. The two rushed over the rickety structure, the bridge swaying dangerously with each step, threatening to collapse under their weight. Behind them, the creature growled in frustration as it watched them reach the other side. Then it turned its attention to the bridge. With a powerful swipe of its claw, it broke the remaining support beams, and the bridge collapsed with a deafening roar, plunging into the turbulent river below. They fell onto the muddy shore on the opposite side, gasping for breath as they watched the debris disappear into the white water, a vivid reminder of their escape. However, the creature did not give up. It stood on the riverbank, its blue eyes fixed on them. The powerful currents seemed to be holding it back, and it let out one last, frustrated roar before turning and disappearing back into the jungle. His metal form was swallowed up by the dense vegetation, and a sense of relief swept over them. For a moment, the exhaustion and fear that weighed on them were temporarily forgotten, but the question remained: what had they released into the world with this creature and its alien technology? It was a threat unlike anything humanity had ever faced. Despite the immediate danger, Koval quickly regained consciousness, brushing the dirt off his clothes. "We need to go back," he said in a trembling voice. "We have to warn everyone." The authorities were worried that this situation could lead to a catastrophe. Annie nodded, her expression determined. Their journey was far from over. They needed to return to civilization and warn the world of the impending danger. But they also had to keep secret the truth about the extraterrestrial origin of the creature. The world was not ready for such a revelation. As they entered the jungle, the oppressive silence was filled with anticipation. Meeting the creature had shaken them, but it had also ignited their resolve. It wasn't just about saving the world from a monster. It was about understanding him, about finding a way to communicate with him. Perhaps there was a way to coexist with this alien visitor, a way to avoid a devastating conflict. But first they had to survive. Days turned into nights as Anand and Koval made their way through the treacherous jungle. Hunger and exhaustion weighed heavily on their minds. Memories of the enraged creature haunted their dreams, a constant reminder of the danger they carried with them. Finally, they came across a clearing, noticing a column of smoke in the distance. A glimmer of hope flashed in their hearts, a possible sign of civilization. As they approached, the smoke condensed into a terrifying sight. A small village in ruins, charred huts scattered on the ground like fallen teeth. The air was filled with the stench of burnt wood and something more pungent, flesh. Koval's face paled as he knelt down. They found the creature, and cold terror gripped their hearts. They hoped to warn the world, but it seemed it was already too late. This village, with its innocent victims, was the first casualty in a war they hadn't even started yet. Suddenly, a primordial roar echoed through the air, bursting out of the smoldering ruins. The creature's metallic form shimmered menacingly in the afternoon sun, its blue hue sparkling. The creature's eyes narrowed as it surveyed the scene. His chest rose and fell in a mechanical rhythm, and she realized with sickening certainty that this was not a mindless monster. It understood the destruction it caused and the fear it instilled. There was a glimmer of something like sorrow in his luminous eyes. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw the only survivor emerge from the rubble. It was a boy no older than 10 years old, who looked at the creature with horror and defiance in his eyes. He picked up a small stone, his voice trembling with anger. "Leave us alone!" he shouted. The creature turned its gaze on the boy. His expression was unreadable for a moment. An unimaginable tension hung in the air. Then, with a quick and unexpected gesture, the creature lowered its massive head towards the boy and let out a collective sigh. It wasn't an attack. It was a suggestion. The creature's metal arm opened, revealing a small device that pulsed with a faint blue light. It seemed to be some kind of device. The boy's eyes widened in confusion as he examined the wreckage. After a moment of hesitation, driven by an impulse he couldn't explain, he carefully reached out and picked up the device. The creature made a soft rumbling sound, almost like a sigh, and turned away from the village, disappearing back into the jungle. Koval watched it go, stunned by what had just happened. Tears welled up in his eyes, a mixture of grief and a strange sense of surprise. The creature, despite its destructive power, showed a moment of compassion, a glimmer of intelligence that challenged their initial perception of it as a mindless monster. But the village was a vivid reminder of the consequences of their meeting. It wasn't a fairy tale with a happy ending. Lives were lost, innocence was destroyed, and news of the destroyed village and the giant metal primates spread like wildfire. The armed forces were on high alert, ready to face the creature. However, a new force will not be the solution. She caught a glimpse of something in the creature's eyes, a hint of sorrow, a longing for understanding. Unfortunately, Koval was not interested in understanding. Blinded by the prospect of sensationalism and driven by fear, he sold the confiscated alien device to the highest bidder, a rogue scientist eager to use it as a weapon. A few days later, news spread that the military base was testing alien technologies to assess their destructive capabilities. The potential was neutralized by a catastrophic explosion. Rescue efforts were hampered by a flickering blue energy field emanating from the site. The creature, cornered and misunderstood, responded with its only means, watching the news with a heavy heart. The world now viewed him as an unstoppable enemy. It knew what she had to do: contact Orion, the guide on the island. Together they developed a plan. A plan of last resort was devised to intercept the creature before it could cause further harm. Annie and Orion returned to the jungle, a beacon of calm amid the escalating conflict. The setting sun colored the sky with shades of orange and purple, touching us of the beauty and fragility of life. They were on a mission of hope, desperately trying to outwit fear and delusion. Annie's heart was heavy with the knowledge that this story would end not with a triumphant roar, but with a quiet symphony of steel and sorrow.